Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome to an instant race reaction to the 2019 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and really I guess a kind of roundup of the end of the 2019 season. I know it's been a long while since you see myself, Callum and Tom on your screens here talking about real life Formula 1. It's been a very, very busy period for us three in general last month or so we haven't got around to doing the regular podcast, but here we are to talk about that last race and just 2019 in general, I guess, and looking forward to 2020. Lads, that race, obviously, we can all agree, wasn't the most blistering finale, and kind of shows that if that Brazil GP we had last time out was the finale, that would have been absolutely insane, but unfortunately it wasn't, and that Abu Dhabi one was very much an Abu Dhabi race, really, wasn't it?
One day they'll switch it back so that Brazil is finishing off. Imagine if we finished with that Brazil race. We probably, like the amount of people that said that. I mean, Abu Dhabi, it wasn't that bad. Like, there was quite a few battles towards the end of the race. Not necessarily we saw them, thanks to some brilliant TV director.
Good
but
stuff.
there was a nice battle regarding the two-stop versus the one-stop. I mean, at the front, Hamilton had just checked out. Like, he absolutely dominated that race. And we saw a nice bit of some drivers coming through the field, some people changing their strategies throughout the race, and also a nice little experiment to see what F1 would be like without a DRS. I actually quite enjoyed it. I don't know about you two. I quite liked the race without DRS.
Yeah, it was pretty good, but still, it's a classic Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The less said about the racing action, the better. Like you said, there was a few battles, but the race director had other ideas. He wanted to show Bottas chasing thin air, for a couple of laps. That was more important. So, yeah, still, I think as a whole, as far as Abu Dhabi races go, okay. But I think it's worth mentioning, I think the second half of the season was spectacular, really. Some of them races we had, from Hockenheim to Brazil, those shock podiums, and then also Ferrari's sudden resurgence, which made it interesting, and then the Red Bull at the end finishing strongly, and just every race really being pretty decent, to be fair, with the exception of maybe one or two in the second half of the season, since France, really. So I think, all in all, a decent-ish season as a whole, because the first half was quite bad.
It wasn't a half, it was up till France, so I think it was a banger season. Like, I think the result, I tweeted about this, the result might be the same as previous years, but that was a very good year of Formula 1. Very, very good year. Like,
yeah, that still irks me a little bit, the fact the results are the same. That's kind of why I'm like...
It's a little bit annoying, but I can really appreciate this season has been much better than the last, 2018, 17, 16. Well, 16 was interesting because of the rivalry, but some of the races weren't that great, whereas this year just had so many interesting races, basically, to talk about. So, yeah, it's been a real good one, but this race was semi-interesting. Yeah, I guess for this tire strategy is kind of cool to see. I was surprised actually how fast Perez was catching Lando Norris at the end there, and the way obviously Sainz then switched on to try and catch the Renaults. Yeah, let's just talk about that briefly. Again, F1 director, he's been piss poor this year. Obviously, we talk about Monaco being a separate director, but there's been so many races this year where they've just been horrendous, and to the point where Carlos Sainz called out the meme of him not being on TV that much, called out F1, and then I think didn't F1 even reply and be like, yeah, we're going to look into, showing more midfield battles or whatever, like,
Oops.
just, I don't know what happened.
What you just got to remember is, like, when you looked at today's race, and it was when it was Norris defending from Perez, and you saw like Kvyat so close, and obviously the great battles between McLaren and Renault, and then you look at it and go, what if there wasn't a top six? That would be one of the most ultimate races on the planet. But just because there's 6 cars in front of them, they don't bother looking at it. It is quite bizarre. And I mean, I know there were, like, they do. I from like a filmmaker perspective, I know that, and I know how they have to kind of establish the positions. Yeah, you've got to show your winner, obviously crossing the line. Like, you can't stop that. But then that's where you've got to start looking into things like split screen. Sky do it quite poorly, in my opinion. I think the F1 can, if they have a proper go at it themselves, or like at least picture in picture and try and work. Obviously, I think we spoke about it in the past about MotoGP and how they do it quite effectively.
Yeah.
But there was a titanic battle going on in the midfield, and we were looking at a timing tower. Not too impressive, in my opinion.
Yeah, basically. So, yeah, that was usual stuff from F1 there, really. But apart from that, yeah, it was not really much else to talk about in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Hamilton checked out. It was kind of cool in a way, though, I guess, for him, obviously winning the championship. It's been a long while since he's been on pole to then book out with such a strong race, I guess, in that kind of way. And, obviously, we heard that stat during the race. He's won 8 races not from pole. The last time he won from pole was France. So it's been a long while since he's that kind of race. And since he is the champion of this year, it kind of was almost fitting in a way that he gets back to like full form, I guess, if you could say, at Abu Dhabi. And then Ferrari this entire race weekend, again, wouldn't be the end of the decade of Formula One if they weren't being clowns again. Vettel spinning in qualifying, fuel irregularity. We don't even know about that. That still has to be checked. So Leclerc still might be disqualified. You just don't know. So, yeah, Ferrari, good way to end the decade there with that one. But looking forward to 2020, guys. I think we'll kind of already agree that there's not much else to talk about for Abu Dhabi. So let's look forward then towards this winter period, 2020. There's a lot to be excited about, right? There's a lot to be excited about.
There is, but there is that very weird thing where we're all looking forward to 2021, that 2020 is going to be a continuation of 2019. But as we've discussed, 2019's actually been a mega season apart from the championship fight. Just because Hamilton had a stellar start to the season and Mercedes as well. Just because of that, it just made the rest of the season quite bittersweet because the racing was so good. We had so many shocks, so many absolute stellar battles at the front, and the cars kind of proving that, sometimes we don't really the cars aren't that bad at the moment when it comes to following each other. It's just they just need to be in the right circumstances, and they need to just basically not know what's going to happen. They need to be bunched up a bit more, which I think the FIA are going to do. Not a huge fan of it because it's very NASCAR, of just the entertainment caution that they throw out just to kind of bunch everyone up. But we never really complain when we see such stellar races at the end, such as Brazil. So I don't know, very bittersweet, and I hope that 2020 just continues on from 2019. Maybe they do. I'd love to see them experiment with getting rid of DRS at some point during next season just to see what happens. But no, I think the general consensus from me is it's just a bit bittersweet because we're just kind of waiting for not next year, the year after, and the rules and regs changes.
I'm going to be very on the fence with this one. I'm going to say I'm kind of looking forward to next year, but I'm also not, because ultimately we are relying on other teams to catch up. I want to see McLaren get closer to the top of 3, Ferrari and Red Bull close that gap. But it's been so many years now in the hybrid era, which we keep saying that, and it just doesn't happen. So I'm just going to reserve judgment on that one. I'm fully expecting another Mercedes domination next year. I'm not going to buy into the preseason BS that we got served up this year. It's not going to happen anymore. I'm not going to fall for it. And in regards to 2021, again, I want to be excited for it, but at the same time, I still have reservations because we've had, rule changes in 2017, we had rule changes in 2019 this season, and Mercedes still come out on top. So again, I'm going to just keep reserved about things. Dare I say, 2020 could be a better year for F1 than 2021 in the sense that there's actually some stability in the rules now. So maybe Ferrari and Red Bull could catch up, whereas 2021 could maybe
that's just
ruin the progress. Exactly. So I think there's a two-way street. So I'm going to stay cautious with what's to come, and Mercedes have a massive advantage. It's quite fitting, but it always happens. The last race is always they always say, "Oh, the gloves are off," and then it's a status quo. The fastest team always wins the last race. It always happens, whether it's F1, MotoGP. The man who wins the championship or who's been the best driver all season ends up winning, and that was the case today. Hamilton was so comfortable in this race, and I think overall the strongest car. They won it after 8 races. The gap was too big because they kept on getting the 1-2s as well, which was really, really painful. And it says a lot when the person second in the championship was his teammate, by 87 points. So, yeah, I think reserve judgment and cautiousness moving into 2020.
All right. Well, I feel a lot more positive going into next year than maybe you two combined. Just because I think with Ferrari being so slow at the start this year and they're having to play that catch-up in the season, I just hope that now going into this winter they can not have that again. Because like we said, the fact the championship was pretty much already kind of half done in a way, because by the time we got to France, because Mercedes was so on top of it basically, and then after that we had all these banger races, all this unpredictability. And if you look at it, I think if the championship started from Austria onwards, it would be a really close championship fight. And if we had like a whole half season to go then after this Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, basically, it'd be a very close fight. So I just hope that they can do that. And then for Red Bull, that's the only kicker for me, is like, we've talked about this so many times, like so many years where Red Bull get really quick towards the end of the season, and then we're like, oh, could they now actually hit the ground running? And it's been a long, long while since Red Bull have hit the ground running in an F1 season, in the V6 era. So I just hope this can be finally the year they do hit the ground running. You know, this, like we said, so there's stability in the rules now. Can you guys just please get your act together, turn up with a car that's not bare bones and is your actual car at the pre-season Australia, and just, you know, actually be there at the very start and not just at the end. But obviously, yeah, at the same time,
the only trouble is now is that with 2021 on the horizon, like, I know there's so much silly season crap, and, you know, Mercedes being potentially bought out and this, that, and the other. The issue now is you've got to balance your development for 2020 and your development for 2021. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Mercedes haven't already started looking into developing.
I'm
a
sure
lot of their teams
I'm
started
sure,
developing.
I'm sure the top three teams.
But bearing in mind how much progress they've made already, I bet Mercedes are a long way ahead compared to a lot of other teams. Which I understand, Tom, your pessimism on it. I mean, I don't necessarily think that the Mercedes is going to drop through the field. It's just everyone else has just got to catch up.
Yeah, it's not. I don't want to sound pessimistic as well. That I want to make a key difference here. I do have hope that things will change. It's just we keep saying every year since 2014, nothing's really changed. Like, Brundle referenced it on commentary. You know, that race today, that was shades of 2014-15 Mercedes dominance. Like, Bottas comfortably, like, he'd probably get third because I think Leclerc will get disqualified. He was quicker than Leclerc on a hard tyre. Leclerc's on softs. And Hamilton was so comfortable. Like, when he pumped in that lap record at the end, it was so easy. You know, there's been moments this season where, you know, even back to Australia, the first race, they were so much quicker. So I'm just not gonna buy the narrative from the media. Put it that way. That's what I'm trying to say here. I'm not gonna fall for any storylines.
Here's a narrative for you: Mercedes will drop off when Hamilton leaves.
I completely agree. I think if this is the way I see it, I think Hamilton, if he did go to Ferrari, they'd get back on top. Simple as that. Because I think Hamilton's got some kind of magic about him that wherever he goes.
Well, I think, yeah, Hamilton's that kind of character as well. He would demand, like, you know, he would not take no shit from Ferrari. Like, get your stuff together, mate. Like, what is this strategy? What's this strategy play? What's this work back at the factory? Like, get it sorted. Like, I'm here to win, sort of thing. So
I tweet out, I would love Hamilton to go to Ferrari. It would be so
We've
odd.
talked about it before. I think we talked about it maybe the last podcast, last full podcast we did, was that dynamic would just be so crazy to see, wouldn't it?
I'd love it, because I genuinely think that Hamilton might be the right person to get Ferrari to the front, because he's done it, and you know what I mean. Like, he did it with Mercedes. I know Mercedes were along. They started developing their 2014 car in 2012 and stuff like that, But, you know, I just feel like he's the extra bit of magic that... And the silly season now is Hamilton goes to Ferrari, Vettel goes back to Red Bull, and Verstappen goes to Mercedes. That's the silly season rumours at the moment, which would be mental.
I think
Absolutely
2021, more than the excitement for the regulations and the cars,
market.
I'm more excited for the driver market.
Silly season.
Everybody is out of contract.
2020 silly season is going to be great. It's going to be so great.
It's going to be madness. And I'm hoping in amongst that, you know, even if we do get some Alonso, Hulkenberg, again, like, if they could take some seats as well, I think it could be a really strong grid as well, moving forward. So that, again, like McLaren, for example, if they progress next year and then they become not a top team, but let's say they considerably bridge that gap, then maybe you could say, oh, Alonso might fancy a move. You know, could Sainz be on the move? Could Norris go somewhere else? You know, because also it would mean they would have had a good season for them to kind of move on. So again, it could all move. The jigsaw for 2021 is very exciting, but like I said, it's more for the driver lineup than necessarily I think the regulations, because I think we all know the regulations. They announce what's more or less going to happen, but it's still kind of up in the air. Like, teams could interpret the rules in their own way, and the loopholes they can take. So we don't quite know yet. So I think for now, moving forward 2020, I just want to see a bit more consistency from Red Bull and Ferrari. Yeah. Not necessarily a major improvement, consistency.
A more sustained challenge. A more sustained challenge, I think, is exactly what they need.
I'd expect 2020 to be dominated by the news and dominated by everything but on track. So I think the off-track stuff will be that good anyway that hopefully the on-track stuff is almost as good as well, that 2020 will be such a good year because it'll have so much anticipation and everything on track is really good. And next year, the following year will be so anticipated as well. It could be a start-up of a whirlwind of what the sport can become going into this next decade. It's actually quite exciting. And that's why I'm not exactly writing off next year, because next year is just going to be... There's just going to be so much excitement.
Well, I just hope it's more of the same of what we've seen from France onwards, and on added caveat, like you said, all the off stuff. As soon as it hits like June next year, there's going to be so many news articles every single week about this and that driver, and all the cars and stuff like that for 2021 as well, in terms of rumours of who's making progress or whatever, or what's going to happen. So it's exciting times. Hopefully, exciting times.
Drive to Survive season 3 will be sick. Let's put it that way. Like, I don't think that season 2... I'm looking forward to that for this season. Me too.
Yeah.
Like, season 2 is going to be brilliant because I think we're going to have such an insight into McLaren.
I'm looking forward to the Pierre Gasly redemption arc episode where it ends with Brazil and that podium. That'll be great.
Yeah. And there'll be obviously multiple episodes about McLaren. We'll have the whole episode about Mercedes and their absolute shit show of a German Grand Prix.
Yeah.
That's going to be hilarious to watch. And I'm glad they're doing this, and I would like them to continue that because it gives such a good insight into what we don't see, and it makes you kind of want to rewatch the season again.
Yeah,
just because there's so much anticipation, and literally next year they will be able to make like a bloody 20-part every single race episode with the amount of stuff that will be, the amount of rumours and the amount of young drivers wanting to mix and match throughout the entire field. It'd be great, honestly. From what I can see, it's working, that series. Getting younger people, and the amount of new people I'm seeing on Twitter at the moment watching the sport is amazing. It's absolutely brilliant.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. But I think on that note, I think we'll wrap it up in here for this little reaction, this kind of mini podcast, I guess, for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. I don't know, lads, I think we'll try and reconvene and get one final actual proper podcast done for the end of the year before we see out for the winter break and those off-season blues set in, I guess. But for this one then, guys, if you have enjoyed it, hit that like button. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. If you are new around here, subscribe to this channel for more. You can check out these guys. The Twitter handles will be on screen the entire time. If you do want to support us, you can check us out on GT Omega as well and use the code PITLANEF1 or Patreon as well down in the description. But guys, that's been this one. That's been this little reaction to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the whole season, and we'll catch you maybe for one last podcast in a bit in December at some point maybe. But till then, guys, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.